Unstoppable, a book by W.P. Thrift, read by name redacted, Chapter 2, The Oracles Prophesy. The tension in the air was thicker than the thick scent of mildew that clung to the ancient walls. The men were not happy that this night had so callously allowed the person they'd been trapped with to die without lifting a finger to help. Light shined in through the open windows all along the wall as they traversed the hallway. The windows were just carved squares in the stone wall and were too high up for Lucia to see through. Eventually, a crack in the wall would let her see out, and see just how high up their group currently was. They were not only on a very high floor, but they were far up on the side of a mountain. "What's your name, miss?" Lucia asked, walking beside the knight, but clearly having trouble keeping pace with her. All the same, she forced a smile onto her face, pretending like everything was fine. "Elizabeth," she replied. "May I call you Liz?" "No." "Sir Elizabeth, if I may have a word," John began. "No, just Elizabeth. I detest titles." "Sir Knight," John continued, "why did you let that woman die?" "Why did you let her die?" "Beg your pardon." "You didn't try to stop her, either. Why is her life my responsibility?" "It's your duty to serve and protect the people as a knight of the Kingdom of Winterdrest." "Oh? And was she from Winterdrest?" "One, I don't rightly know." "Are you? That's her small salary." No." "Interesting." Elizabeth acted like it was anything but interesting, but at that word the man gave up, choosing to be silent. He still wasn't happy about this, but he figured if he survived this ordeal, he could file a formal complaint against her. They stopped in front of a door, and Elizabeth dropped the bag of treasure and opened it before rummaging through it. Sam reached for the doorknob, and Elizabeth powerfully swatted his hand away, causing him to scream that it's broken. "It's not broken. Stop whining," Elizabeth said. "Try and open a door without my permission again, and I will break it next time." "What's the big deal? It's just a door." Growls and scraping, claws scratching on wood, and the gnashing of teeth could all suddenly be heard just on the other side of the door. "Oh, my sweet lord, now they know we're here. We're going to have to go the long way around. Thanks for being so loud, you giant idiot," Elizabeth snapped at Sam. Sam looked genuinely hurt at that remark, muttering to himself that she didn't need to be so mean. But he didn't dare say it loud enough that she could hear him. Lugging the bag of treasure the long way around, back the way they came and through several more corridors which were dimly lit by torches along the way, much too far away for daylight to reach them in the cavernous tunnels of the castle, they eventually came to another closed door, and again Elizabeth dropped her bag and began to rummage through it. She glanced back up at the men, giving them a furious look. They were both smart enough to keep their mouths shut this time. Finding a pair of magnificent glowing blue gauntlets, both covered in dark red runes lining them top to bottom, she removed her own gauntlets, dropped them into the treasure bag, and put on the new pair. "Magical gauntlets?" Lucia gasped. "Are you a magic knight?" "I am, when I use magical artifacts." Elizabeth was knelt down checking the floor. Before putting the second gauntlet on, she wiped a finger across it and then rubbed her thumb and index finger together. She was checking to see how much moisture had gathered on the floor just outside the door, which would be telling of just how wet the room itself would be. This detail was critical to her strategy. "Why not wear them all the time?" John asked, fascinated by them. "Their power is limited, and they'll sell for a higher price if I keep them in close to mint condition. However, sometimes it can't be helped and they have to be used," Elizabeth explained. "When we enter this room, I'll need both of you to find higher ground immediately. Climb on furniture, tables, climb the walls themselves, I don't care." "What if we don't?" John asked, untrusting. "Then you'll die, which I also don't care if you choose this option." Elizabeth opened the door before they could ask any more questions. Far across a fairly large room, a horde of zombie dogs still clawed at the door they'd been at an hour earlier. The beasts were unnaturally large with sunken-in eyes. Dry leather flesh clung to their bones, most of which were visible. All the same, they somehow heard the intrusion and turned to face it before creating unnatural barks from their not-intact throats while rushing across the room. With her magical gauntlets glowing bright, she reached one hand up, ready to slam it down and send waves of electricity through the very moist floor, but then she saw that only the two men had jumped up on a nearby table while the girl, Lucia, remained frozen in the doorway. Her feet were wrapped in thick cloth. No leather soles, no possible protection from being shocked. "Girl!" Elizabeth screamed at her heart suddenly picking up. Lucia looked up at her bottom lip trembling and her body shaking. Elizabeth saw the horde of zombie dogs at one glance, and saw the girl when she glanced back. She reached for a dagger, but her jeweled gauntlets were too thick to grip the handle properly to draw it from her belt. The first dog jumped not at her, but at the easy target, the girl. FWOP. Elizabeth kicked the dog away, then grabbed Elizabeth roughly by one arm and threw her arm popping out of socket, towards the two men on the table who caught her and nearly fell off seconds before. FWWWWIIIZZZZZZZZZZLE. The zombie dogs flashed blue and yellow before their bodies all erupted into flames all around Elizabeth. She'd slammed her hand down onto the floor, sending waves of thunder through it and into these beasts. Her own body, while covered in steel, was insulated with padded leather inside of the armor, protecting her from her own attack. A couple hounds nipped at her after the light show, but fell into a true death a heartbeat later. The two men finished falling backwards with the girl, falling off the table. She broke her fall on them, and they both nearly cracked their skulls open on the hard stone floor. They were too stunned to cry out in protest, the air having been knocked from their bodies. Similarly, the girl was in shock as well, her arm in severe pain all of a sudden. Lucia tried to hold back the tears, she really did, but it was too much for her to bear. She broke down into sobs, crying out that her arm hurt. It hurt so bad. Elizabeth felt a ping of guilt which she cursed herself for feeling. This brat was lucky to be alive. How dare she make Elizabeth feel bad for saving her life? That's what she tried very hard to tell herself. Walking over to the girl, the two men pulled themselves up from the ground and tried to position themselves between the knight and the child. Elizabeth shot them a glare, and they buckled, moving aside. "You two are such cowards. Neither of you are her father, I pray." "Nay, but you're being cruel to the child," Sam said. "I saved the brat's life," Elizabeth countered. "Girl, this is going to hurt. Brace yourself." "What? Why? What are you, AAUUUCK?" Elizabeth popped Lucia's arm back into place, fixing the damage she'd accidentally caused by yanking her arm as she'd thrown her so hard earlier. The two men, ignorant of such a procedure, looked ready to attack Elizabeth, not to defend the girl, but to preemptively defend themselves. If this knight was so cruel to a child, imagine what would become of them, after all. Getting up, she walked back into the hallway they'd just left from, taking off her magic gauntlets and dropping them back down into the bag before retrieving her old, more dexterous gauntlets back out of the bag and sliding them back on. She'd left the bag out on dry ground before walking into the room. Once, back when she still thought the ground lightning was very cool, she'd made the mistake of burning her treasure bag and melting all the gold in it. These days she was wise enough not to burn her own treasure, but also jaded enough to find no more amazement in performing her own magical attack. She returned to the room while the men questioned what she was doing here, where she was going, if they were seeking an exit. She didn't answer them. Instead, she walked across the long gray stone floor and pushed open a door only accessible through this well-guarded room. The men followed behind her, but the young girl waited in the room at first, scared to go anywhere near Elizabeth at this point. She'd just been hurt by her really bad, twice. And since Elizabeth hadn't explained she was fixing her arm a moment ago, Lucia was now twice bitten, and thrice shy of being hurt again. When the two men screamed out in terror, Lucia ran to see what was happening without hesitation. She ran towards danger, and didn't even notice her arm felt better as she did so. The men had screamed at the sight of what was held captive in the next room. A magical cage made up of blinding beams of light held a giant red-horned archdemon. It would stand 30 feet tall if the roof was higher, but instead it was forced to hunch over. Its skin was scaled like a serpent, its legs had their knees bent backwards like a satyr. Its massive face had the grin of a crocodile on a pointy snout just below beady red eyes. "I am Lord of the Thousand Hells. Release me or I'll eat your soul," the archdemon's voice thundered, scaring the men to their very cores. Elizabeth reached into her pocket and brought out a locket. The demon's eyes lit up with sudden anticipation. "Wait, no, you can't!" Sam screamed in far too high-pitched a voice, amplified by his tremendous fear. "That locket, that will free the demon! I've read the stories, I know all the tales of terror. I can't believe such a thing is real, and I can't believe you'd free him. Are you a villain?" Elizabeth sighed, so done with this guy, and dealing with this awful escort quest she had found herself dealing with. "Look, over there," Elizabeth pointed inside the archdemon's cage of light. "The lord of this castle, Lord Von Dread, keeps the spare keys to his private chambers in there. If I'm going to loot his private treasure hoard, I need that key. Get it?" Sam's face turned pale. "No, oh no, oh no, no, no," Sam muttered. "We can't be in Castle Von Dread. We can't be. That's a myth, a legend. We're all going to die." "Only if you distract me or slow me down," Elizabeth told him. "Look, just watch me, okay?" Elizabeth held up the necklace to the cage, and the bars of light vanished, freeing the demon after its 1,000 years of imprisonment. Without hesitation, the demon rushed Elizabeth. Its hand had 8 fingers with 6-foot-long claws, each claw the length and girth of a bastard sword, and Elizabeth rushed forward as the claw smashed into the floor, causing rubble and rocks to erupt everywhere. The 2 men had already ran screaming from the room the moment the demon was freed, but the young child, feeling full of faith for this lady knight, had stayed put, and in time it would prove to cost her dearly. Lucia screamed and fell backwards, finally landing butt first onto the cold stone ground and getting dirt all over the fanny of her dress, the very thing she'd wanted to avoid the most. This was the only thought in her head as the archdemon approached her, suddenly fascinated by this small child. "Oh, I will be your death, child, the life you know. I foresee it, I will take it all from you," the archdemon hissed, then drew its claw high into the air. Glancing back up, Lucia saw the claw coming down the instant Elizabeth rushed past and snatched her out of the way. She saw the demon shrink into the distance as she clung tight to Elizabeth, looking over her shoulder at the demon while she was rushed away from the scene. Turning back and holding the locket up again, the magical cage of light erupted from the ceiling once more, buckling forward to seize the demon and drag it back towards the back of the room where it would become trapped again. But while being drug along, the demon dug its claws into the ground and tore a deep trench into it, a trench which had not been there previously, that now compromised the integrity of the cage. Elizabeth was well aware of this, and for a long moment held on to the enchanted locket, staring down at the floor, wondering if she should walk back over and stick the demon with her sword now, lest he use the damaged floor to escape later. And then Lucia squeezed her around the neck, thanking him profusely for saving her life. Distracted by the girl, Elizabeth let the thought of the demon slip her mind. She left the room, closing the simple wooden door behind her. The demon could have cursed her from where he was, but instead he remained incredibly quiet. "The demon doesn't yell. Is it dead?" John asked. "There's no way you've slain an archdemon." "She saved me from it," Lucia cried out. "She saved me again. Thank you so much, Liz. Even if you hurt me, I don't care. Everyone hurts me, but nobody ever saves me. Thank you so much." Lucia squeezed Elizabeth around the neck again, much to her frustration. She shoved the girl down to the ground, back off her. "Let's go. The master of the castle's room is far from here, and I'd like to leave this castle before sundown," Elizabeth said. "It's too haunted to stay the night in, and I don't want to set camp outside in the dark." All perfectly reasonable things to say, so everyone followed her without further question, for all of 5 minutes. Then the questioning resumed. "How are you so confident?" Sam asked. "I'm not confident, I'm bored," Elizabeth replied, treading ever forward. "I think he means, how do you have the courage to open the cage of an archdemon? Why were you ever brave enough to enter Castle Von Dread to begin with?" John asked. "Because even I have expenses, and looting old castles is the best way to make a living," Elizabeth said, shaking her giant burlap sack of treasure to indicate how large and mighty it was. "Is all of that from this castle?" Lucia asked. "Yes," Elizabeth said. "It's been a busy day." "But you knew how to use those magic gauntlets," John noted. "They're not unique. I've seen dozens like them before." "So you do this a lot?" "Yes." "Then I repeat, what gives you the courage? I'd be scared witless." Elizabeth sighed. She didn't want to answer him. Wasn't worth her breath. I want to be brave like you when I grow up, Lucia said, already idolizing her. Could I be brave like you? Could you teach me to be? You can't. What if I try really hard? It has nothing to do with effort. What do you mean? Elizabeth bit her lip. She'd wanted to stay quiet about this, but now she was imagining young Lucia here going out into the world with a sword and being slain by the first bugbear she came across. She couldn't live with herself if that happened. Lucia. Elizabeth exhaled slowly. I'll tell you, but only so you'll know not to try in following my footsteps. She considered her words carefully, not sure of just how much of this story to tell Lucia. She kept it fairly straightforward. Have you heard of the immortal oracle? The one that lives atop the highest peak on the mountains of the oracle? Yes, of course. When I was around your age, I fell into a malaise. What's a malaise? It's like a strong melancholy. Lucia didn't know what that word meant either, and pouted, not wanting to ask her what it meant. I was of noble birth, but I had no path before me other than marrying a wealthy man someday and bearing his children. I considered that life to be so dull, so unfulfilling, but it was all I'd been told my entire life, so You went to visit the oracle? Sam asked. Ask him what else you could do. No, Elizabeth thought. I tried to drown myself. After an incident, Elizabeth spoke. My parents brought me to see the oracle, and he told me something that nobody else ever had, that I could do anything I wanted with my life. I told him I'd once dreamed of being a knight or even an adventurer, but I was scared. Yet he told me that my fear was baseless because I would never fail at anything I tried for the next 51 years. It had been written in the stars, he told me. Wait, no joking? John asked. For 51 years you'll never fail at anything? Correct. I cannot fail, and I cannot die for 51 years. And you chose to be both a knight and an adventurer? Lucia asked. Yes, instead of choosing one or the other, I went with both. But failing to be a proper knight, I received no income from the quartermaster. So, Elizabeth shook the bag of gold she carried. And you're sure it's real, the prophecy you were told? Sam asked her. Elizabeth recalled so vividly the words of the oracle that day. She didn't believe him, and her mood had remained unchanged. She'd failed to kill herself in the creek, but the moment her mother's back was turned, she leapt off the tallest bridge she could find, only to land in the back of a cart carrying hay far below. She received minimum harm from the fall, just a few scratches and an itchy bout of hay fever. It was such a miracle that she found herself completely and utterly believing the prophecy, and her parents were so startled by her continued attempts at self-harm that they eagerly agreed to pull some strings and get her signed up to be trained to be a knight if she promised she'd stop trying to hurt herself. This was a life they never imagined for their daughter, but just so long as she was happy, they would bear it. Yet 20 years after hearing the prophecy and a full 30 more years of invulnerability in front of her, Elizabeth had long realized the horrifying truth. She'd never left her malaise. Training as a knight created the promise of a better life in her mind. Setting off on her first adventure did the same. But they were both promises of a better life to come, and both proved to be in vain. Her endeavors never made her happy, never made her feel fulfilled. They never made her feel like life was worth living. And here she was, going through the motions of being an adventurer, any and all excitement she'd once so fleetingly felt for it long gone as everything she attempted to do was effortless for her. You're so cool. I wish I could be an unstoppable knight like you, Lucia said, beaming at pride with her savior. Elizabeth flinched at that. For a second there, she'd nearly cracked a smile. She pushed it down and focused on the task at hand. Dealing with these people were only slowing her down from getting from point A to point B. She just wanted to get this latest journey over with so she could pay off her rent for the next few months. She just wanted the journey to end, and everything that delayed that was an annoyance.